everyone, and welcome to episode 60 of the Stop Shooting All Over Yourself podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Nancy Medoff. Now, Nancy is a confidence coach. She has spent many, many years in corporate America and has done something that I have not seen done in any other book that I have ever read about empowerment and confidence. She has operationalized the actual activities that you need to do to demonstrate confidence in the workplace. And now what I mean by that is that she's not just talking about how you feel confident, the things you need to think about, your mindset work, your therapy, all of those things that obviously we know we need to do, and we've read so many books about them. What she does is she also says, okay, now that you've accepted that, all right, this is the psychological space I need to be in, what are the actual activities? What are the actual steps? What are the actual words I need to say to make that happen? And she does that in her book, Unmute Yourself, Speak Up to Stand Out by Nancy Medoff. I was fortunate enough to see her at the South Shore Conference for Women in November this year. So she was the keynote speaker who opened up the entire event. And from the moment she got on stage, I was blown away by her presence, by her confidence, by her ideas, by the help that she actually gave right there on stage. There was actionable, tactical items, things that you could do immediately to build your confidence. And I thought to myself, my God, this woman's a genius. So I immediately bought her book, and I was so happy to see that it was like super short. It was really short. I loved it so much, changed my life, that I immediately did a podcast about this, which is linked in the show notes, where I did a book review. She saw that podcast. She watched it on the plane, actually, and then sent me a message afterwards and was actually having a conversation with me about some of the things we talked about. And I invited her onto my podcast to have that same conversation with you. So I am so excited now to welcome Nancy Medoff to the podcast, where we're going to talk all about some of the key juicy nuggets in her book, and then some of the things that we were talking about on our chat. So is that we all feel like we have to wait till we feel better to do X, Y, Z. I want to show them that these steps are so actionable. You can take them right now. And you can do these, like they happen on the fly when opportunities show up. So keep your eye open for opportunities to use what you learn, because those are the small moments in which you will surprisingly build your confidence, right? That's really where I felt this came in, was that I felt like you gave me the blueprint for how to appear confident, even if I'm not feeling it in that moment. And I think that's really the key there, is do it. You're not even faking it. You're just taking the action, and the who you are will flow from that naturally.
I love it. I hate the expression "fake it till you make it," because
oh my God, let's talk about that.
it's not fake it till you make it. It's fake it till you are it, right? Yeah. Like it's, Amy Cuddy in her TED Talk, she says, fake it, excuse me. She says, fake it till you believe it. Yeah. And that was life-changing for me. I don't know what's going on with my voice. I'm going to apologize in advance. It keeps cracking.
You sound great.
What else? So yeah, I totally agree with you. I totally agree. Okay.
And then I had a question for you, but now I can't remember what it is. Okay, so we're just going to dive in and get started. Okay.
One more question for you before you start that. You have a TED Talk secured, or you are pitching?
I am still pitching the TED Talk. So I'm working with, so it's interesting. I'm working with Maria Milagros on doing I'm working on my TED Talk. And it's actually like, I'm practicing it now. So like it's done. It's, oh my God, it's so good. And last year at URI, I was waitlisted. So I was pretty damn close last year. So this year is the year. I want that big red TED behind me, like for no other reason than the semiotics of having the big red TED behind me. Like, that's just the thing I want. It's just like, I'm going to have that damn thing.
Yeah. I get a list sent to me. I'm happy to send it to you, of all the TED Talks. Like, there's a guy that does this.
Oh my God. Yes. Thank you so much.
I'll introduce you. So can you send me an email and I'll introduce you to him?
Oh my God.
It's $100 for the whole year. It's a great.
That's exactly what I need. Oh my God. Just this morning I was thinking, if only I had a list of all the TED Talks.
Yeah. Okay. It's Nancy Medoff at nancymedoff.com.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the other thing is in the links, I forgot to put the link to my website, the link to my coaching packages, so we can revisit that later too.
You know what's funny is I pulled them out for you because I was like, I want to make sure that I put that in there.
I've been like a squirrel lately. Okay.
And lastly, you can swear if you want. I'm all about authenticity. I swear all the time. Yeah. If you don't swear, you don't have to. But if you do swear, don't feel like you have to censor yourself.
That was my other question. What % would you say of your audience is LGBTQ plus?
a small percentage, but not
Okay,
too super
right.
high. I think most of the percentage who would be LGBTQ are people like, I find, so this is what's really interesting about my audience, which is why I actually shut down every other part of my business and just focus on the podcast, and I'm
Go
like
ahead.
rebuilding, is because what I found about my audience and me is that almost every person in my audience has trauma, but they didn't know it when they first started listening to me. It's only through me talking about my trauma and my experience that they realize, holy shit. Same thing for anxiety, same thing for, like, one of my clients was just telling me yesterday, she said, I realized because of you 2 years into working with you that I had chronic pain, and I had actually had back problems for 20 years, but it never occurred to me that I had chronic pain. So the purpose of the podcast is really like, and I have people messaging me now who I would never have known were LGBTQ. And because they're hearing me talk, they're like, can you explain this to me a little bit? Because I am exploring this within myself. So my audience actually tends to be people who are on the cusp of discovery, who are, they just need someone to say, I've had this experience before. And what ends up happening usually is they stick with me for a while, but then I direct them to someone who is more appropriate for their lifetime. Someone who's more niche for exactly what they
Yeah,
need.
yep,
So
yep,
I'm
right.
really like a waypoint.
Love it.
All right. Oh my God, so exciting. Okay. Welcome everyone. I just did the intro. You all listened to it, and I was really excited. Then I had to do it, like, record it like 4 times. And now we're here with Nancy. I am so excited to have you here. Nancy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. You are excited to have me, not nearly as excited as I am to be here. So let her rip.
Together. Okay, great. So
Love
first,
it.
I want to, like, I talked about this in the intro, but I just want to say that the impetus for this conversation was your book, Unmute Yourself, Speak Up, and Stand Out. And you talk about, and get your seat at the table. Let's not forget about that part. That's key. Get your seat at the table. It's a really quick read, and I'm curious. How did you, like, when you first started thinking about writing this book, did you feel like it was going to be like, oh my God, there's so much I have to share with people. How do I shrink it down? Or was your original idea something bite-sized? Like, how did you envision this when you started?
So I would love to share a story with you that, I was walking on the beach one day and a divine source came and spoke to me and told me it was time to write the book. Excuse me, I had a little bit of a cold. The book is a compilation of all of my talks and training and coaching. And the way the book came to be, during COVID, my husband and I were sharing space, which was very interesting. And he would hear me on the phone all day. And he said to me, you really need to write this book. He'd been telling me for a while. I'm like, I'm not writing a book. I'm not writing a book. And then he said, you really need to write this. I hear you and you keep saying the same thing over and over again. And people are listening to it and it is making a difference. So I sat down to write it. I did not think it would be, I knew how I wanted to write it. So if you read the book, I process in threes. It's the rule of 3.
Mm-hmm.
People remember things in threes. So I'm like, okay, speak up, stand out. And then the third section is step up. So I had the sections. And I thought it would be a playbook, and I wanted it to be an easy read that you could pick up and ideally do it in 1 session or 2 sessions. And that was it. I just started writing, and then I hired an editor and put it out there.
That's fabulous. Oh my gosh. See, you inspired me, because it's almost as if the same conversation has happened in my house. My wife is like, you say the same thing. You need to write the book so you don't have to say the same thing over and over again. And I'm like, yes, I'll write the book. But I always had this thing inside about, like, oh, later I'll do it. The same thing you were saying, I'll try it later, I'll do it later. But then I saw your book and I was like, oh my God, the impact that it's had on just me and the people that I know. I'm like,
That's
oh
great.
my gosh, I'm robbing people of this impact that I can have.
Exactly. People want to hear what you have to say. They want to hear what you have to say. They wouldn't have bought the book if they didn't want to hear what you have to say. So it's fascinating. It's very, it's fascinating.
It's absolutely, I love it. So one of the first things you talked about, actually, and you talked about this, you talked about this on the when you on stage, and then it's in your book as well, about, and this is actually how our conversation started. So you were watching my book review on the plane, right? Is that where you were watching?
Can I tell this story?
Yeah,
because
please. Oh, I want to hear the story. I'm dying to hear the story.
Okay, so Podsters, this is what I call my podcast community, my Podsters. I was on the plane and I'm sitting down in the seat. I had a few minutes. I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, and all of a sudden it says, Manessa is live. I'm like, let's see what she's doing. And I click on it, and it's you live holding up my book, talking about my book. And I'm like, what is happening? So I was trying to write in the comments, and I'm like, I'm watching. And you're like, wait, what? You're watching? And I'm on the plane, and the flight attendant's like, you got to turn your phone off. I'm like, no, this is like epic. And I was blown away. It was so funny. And that's how we actually really connected and took it to the next level. Because I love talking to you. I love to hear what you have to say. And I would love to hear more about your community and, hear from them as well.
It was wonderful. And because I was like, when I saw you comment, I was like, I'm sorry, what? And I lost my train of thought, and I was like, shit, I don't even know what to say now. So it was fabulous.
So funny.
I was so, it was great. So here's a portion, and obviously we didn't have a chance to talk about it while you were on the plane, and then we kind of started in the chat. But I want to dive into this because this is like there was a segment in the book where we talk about interruption. So let's start. I want to start by just talking about what the story is and like what, how you recommend that people deal with interruptions, because as women and people of color and differently abled people, we're very used to talking and then having someone literally just start talking over you or interrupt you as if you hadn't even said a word. And it's like, I'm sorry, what just happened? And you have some tactics in the book, which I've seen on your Instagram as well. So let's say I'm sitting here in a conference room, I'm having a conversation, and somebody is just like interrupting and speaking over me. What is your recommendation for what we do next?
It happens all the time. Still happens. It happens all the time. And this is why I left my corporate job of close to 30 years. I was a VP of corporate sales, and I left because I was in a meeting and I kept getting interrupted by this one person, and he did it a couple times. And the third time he did it, I looked around the room and I said, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Am I on mute? And I was kind of smart assy about it. And it worked, and it got the man who was leading the meeting said, you know what, she's right, we need to let her speak. And by the way, the person that was leading that meeting, fast forward a few years, his daughter came to me for some coaching, and she said, tell me who it was, tell me who interrupted you, because we worked for the same company we had at the time. And I said, I'm not going to tell you, go ask your father. And she asked her father, and he knew exactly who it was. It was pretty funny. So the message there is, people, never underestimate the impact you have on a person. Mm-hmm. So if you're being interrupted, what I recommend, the first thing you do is you pause. Okay. So, and this is, so let's say you're in a meeting and you're speaking and somebody interrupts you. You can pause and it's a pregnant pause. So it's a pause and you wait just a few extra seconds at the end, because if you wait the few extra seconds, the person who's interrupting you they're going to stop speaking. And then there's going to be this pause, and it's going to be awkward. And that person is going to look like a jerk, or that person is going to look like they interrupted you on purpose. Now, I'm assuming they're interrupting you on purpose, and it's not, some kind of like they can't help themselves. So you can pause and then take back the mic, right? Like that little few seconds is a little awkward, and it kind of subtly tells the room, this was not planned, I don't appreciate this, and by all means, take the floor. It actually shows you're confident. It's almost like saying, hey, you know what? I see that you absolutely need to be heard right now, and I'm so confident in what I'm saying and why I'm here and my message. Go ahead, you take the floor. So that's one tactic. Works for some people, doesn't work for others. And everything I talk about, use it if it works for you, and if it doesn't, that's okay. So the other one is called Excuse Me, I'm Speaking, and this is my favorite. And this is one that really comes to life. And if you want to see it in action, you can go on YouTube and look for Kamala Harris in the vice presidential debate. And you will see that she was interrupted 3 times by then Vice President Mike Pence. And the first time he interrupted her, and this was his tactic was to interrupt her, to be difficult, to make her lose her train of thought, and to kind of screw her up. So the first time he did it, she stopped and she said with a big smile on her face, excuse me, I'm speaking, right? Very sweet and nice. And then he stopped and she continued to speak. And then he said it again. He interrupted her again. And again, she smiled, but she was a little more strident. She said, excuse me, I'm speaking, like talking to a 5-year-old. Mm-hmm. And he stopped. And a few minutes later, he did it again. And that is when she held up her hand, and this has become famous now. She held up her hand and she said, "Excuse me, I'm speaking." Mm-hmm. And he stopped, and that nipped it in the bud. He didn't do it again the rest of the whole debate.
I've seen that picture 1,000 times.
Right. So the reason why I say to start softer is because had she started with, whoa, excuse me, I am speaking, right? Like, do not interrupt me. What would everybody be talking about? I'm out. So, like, this is not rehearsed.
Oh, it'd be like bitch. It'd be like the bitchy president, the bitchy person running for vice president who can't control her emotions.
Right, Kamala the bitch, right? Yeah. So that's why I say the first time, you be polite and you be pleasant, and you say, "Excuse me, I'm speaking." And for me, to be calm and pleasant, it means I'm smiling. And it does, right? Like if I say, "Excuse me, I'm speaking," right? I'm calm right now. I don't look calm and I don't look pleasant. I look mad.
Yeah.
So I overcompensate and I smile. So I say that knowing that there is some controversy about that. And I write it a little bit in the book, and I might actually go back and add some to it, because I want to make sure I'm clear. And you know, and I would love your feedback, your community's feedback. I am not saying smile, honey. I'm not saying, hey girl, you need to smile more. I'm saying if you want to be persuasive and you want to be heard, and you are in a potentially volatile situation, or a situation where you could be construed as being aggressive or adversarial, the best way to disarm someone is to smile. Yeah, that's the best way to do it. And I first learned this with in retail. Somebody would be giving me a hard time, like let's say a gate agent, but let's say I'm trying to get on a different flight, and they would give me a hard time. I would smile, and I noticed that the minute I smiled, their defenses went down and they would actually hear what I had to say. That is all I am saying. I'm not saying be fake. I'm not saying, you know, smile, honey. Like I said, I'm saying if you want to be persuasive and you want to neutralize someone, if you want to neutralize a person, smile at them.
You know, the person who taught me that was you. Did you ever watch The Closer? Kira Sedgwick. Okay, so
love her.
I love her. I love her. And so it was on for several seasons. If anybody hasn't watched it, guys, watch it. She's freaking amazing. And she's a police chief, and every time someone like pisses her off, she does this, thank you so much, you know. And I watched her do that, and it wasn't until like the third or fourth, probably maybe like the fourth season that I was watching it, that I'm like, she does it like the more upset she is, or the more annoyed she is, or the more she brings out that thank you so much. And I was like, this is a tactic. And so I actually started to absorb that into my own, like, I mean, obviously I'm not from the South, so I don't really say it like that, but I really try to, the more upset I am, the more I bring out the positive, the niceness, because I think that, do you feel like, as women, because I was socialized as a woman, and growing up in Pakistan, the most important thing was to grow up and get married, right? So that's like the number one thing you got to do. And so I got to smile, right? And so do you feel like we, as socialized people who are socialized as women, or actually people who are marginalized in a way where they feel like they have to do, like, smile, honey, that kind of thing, do you feel like there's maybe a conversation that we've created a binary that says that either you smile and be fake, right? Or do what you're told, right? Or you're angry. Like, this kind of conversation that we're having now is more about changing the narrative to be like, it's possible to smile and also be holding your ground in a firm way.
I love that question, because as you were talking, one of the things I was writing down was, don't mistake my passion for anger, right? And I say that often. And I say probably 3 or 4 times a week, I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm clarifying what you're saying. And I could say that without a smile, right? I'll say, usually it's actually in my personal life, I'll say, I'm not angry. I'm seeking to understand. So if you vehemently don't want to smile, and you feel that it's not, you don't want to do that, you don't want to go down that road, then I would start by saying, I'm not angry. Because when people think, they will think you're angry. If you don't, it is human nature. If you contradict someone, and we all saw it play out with Kamala. So, oh, she was angry at the end, actually, but so you
Eventually you
want
get
to
angry.
right, right. This is about being heard. It's about being heard. So I would, maybe you can say, I'm not angry. So let's take it back to the you're being interrupted. Oh, so I can't do it without smiling because I know how much it works. So I'm going to try not to smile. I'm not angry. I'd like to finish my thought.
That was very, like, it doesn't seem angry at all, but but it
Right,
does seem like I can tell that it seems sort of, it's firm. Um,
right.
I think that like that brings to, it actually reminds me of something that I thought about years ago that I want to actually bring to the forefront now, which is that for many years, and my wife even talks about this, I was trying to live in a world that I wish existed, right? And so in the world that you wish existed, I can just say, like, we can behave the way that you just said and everything is fine because we're all grown-ups and we all just, like, this is the way. Why do we need to do all of these things, right? But like the truth is we live in a world that does exist. And I think for a lot of us, me especially, because when you said smile in the book, I was like, I'm not gonna fucking smile, which is funny because I had already bought in to that idea, but just being told to smile pissed me off. It's like, why? And then I realized that this has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with confidence. This has more to do with stuff that maybe I want to talk about in therapy, about my anxiety, like about the things that piss me off related to like how I've been treated. But on the flip side, now that I'm in the real world working and trying to be heard, what are the tactics I can use, right?
I love that because when you mentioned that you heard from a couple of people that they didn't like the part about smiling.
Yeah.
And I get that. I get it from time to time. I get that feedback from time to time. And I don't know that if I would ever say it, but I appreciate the feedback. And I would ask that person to think about, why is this such a trigger for you?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you so vehemently opposed to a communications expert telling you that if you would like to be persuasive in a potentially volatile situation, and if you would like to take the attention off of your behavior and keep it on your message, you need to start with a smile. That's what I'm saying.
Yep,
Use it
absolutely.
or don't, right?
Right.
So
Exactly.
this is the world that we live in. It sucks. It is completely unfair. I'm not saying lay down and take it. I'm saying it is what it is. So use these skills, use the skills that you want to use to be able to send the message and spread the message so that you can create a world that you want to live in where women don't have to smile to prove to people that they're not angry.
That's actually my favorite thing that you said so far, which is like, we are of the generation that is building the world for your kids. Like, I don't have kids, so your kids and the children that are and their grandchildren and so on, so that, because I got, let's be real, for us that ship sailed. Like, this is the world we live in, but it doesn't have to be that way for my sister's kids, right? It doesn't have to be that way for my brother-in-law's kids. So I think that's super important. I love that. Now I want to jump on to something else, but I just want to make sure that we talked about all the smiling stuff beforehand, because I want to move on into another thing that you talked about briefly in a chat. Did you have anything else you want to touch on with the smile before we jump on into words?
The only thing I would add is if anybody wants to continue this conversation, send a group chat to me and Vanessa, because I'd love to continue the conversation, because I truly do. I don't want to be offensive. And at the same time, I want to stay true to my message. And that's my message.
And I want to add on to that, actually, that I think it's these conversations that really create deeper understanding and a better ability for us to actually actualize some of the things that you talk about. Because like you said, if you have a visceral reaction to the word smile to where you're just angry and you have trouble getting out of it, then there's something else going on as well. Maybe that tactic isn't right for you right now, but it would behoove you to do the work to figure out why, so that you can take advantage of all of the tools that are available in the toolkit rather than just the ones that feel good right now.
Right. Yeah. Great.
Oh my God, love that so much. And this actually puts us right into the other thing that I wanted to touch base on, because this is one of my favorite topics. So when you and I had talked about it a little, I'm like, yes. You earlier on, we were talking about words and the importance of my wife and I are constantly talking about how important words are and choosing the correct words. So sometimes if we will say something that, like, obviously we know the other person understands, but we're like, I didn't choose the right word, it's impacting me or you negatively, I want to rephrase that. And some words that put us in a really bad emotional state. And you talk about this in the book, where words like just or sorry or, please all the time. And this is so critically important. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on why the choice of words is so important in communication.
So I'm just taking some notes. Just, sorry, and please. So those are 3 words that I would like every woman or person who identifies as a woman to remove from their emails immediately. So let's think about this. You're sending an email to Mike, and you say, "Hi, Mike, attached, please find the report you were looking for." Okay. If you saw Mike at the water cooler, or I'm dating myself, or the coffee machine, if you were in the office and you were going by Mike's desk, would you walk up to him and say, "Hi, Mike, attached, please find the report you were looking for," right? Mm-hmm. You wouldn't. So women overuse please in their emails. I'm going to get to the other 2 in a minute. In their emails, and they overuse them and overuse them and overuse them, and it puts us in a subversive situation. And if you don't believe me, if you're listening to this, maybe you don't, and that's great. If you're listening to this, go through your emails and look at how many times you use the word please, and then look at some of your male colleagues' emails and look at how many times they use the word please. This is by far the number 1 or 2 piece of feedback I get from women that say, I had no idea. I had no idea I used it this much. So instead of saying, "Please let me know when you can get this back to me," perhaps you can say, "What's a reasonable expectation for when I can get this back?" Right? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying to be rude. I'm not saying to be strident, and I'm not saying to be a bitch. I'm saying remove please from your outgoing emails. In the same vein, just. So when you think about, hey, I just want to share an idea here. Okay. Yeah. I just want to share an idea. Okay. So you're minimizing, these are called undermining phrases, and I go through them in the book. You are apologizing for speaking before you even speak. Oh, I know I really don't have any right to say anything, but I just want to say something here. No, take it out. Take it out. There is the descriptor just, that's just enough. That's just what I was looking for. Great. And then there's just as an undermining qualifier. Stop immediately. And I think that if you think about, if you use this as you move forward, you will be blown away at how often you use the word just.
I will tell you. So I just as a word I eliminated probably about a year ago. Please, I'm eliminating because of you. So I started, because I read somebody somewhere said the thing that they did about just, right? And I was like, oh my God, that is exactly what it does. Like, because it's anytime you say I'm just, right? It's almost like, I'm sorry I'm taking up this space. I'm sorry I'm coming in here. I'm sorry I'm bothering you. And we'll come to sorry afterwards. But, we use the word just as a way to, and I think, okay, I'm going to guess where this comes from. You may have talked about this in the book. You remember when we were little and our grandmothers there were 2 things that we'd hear a lot. One is, don't get too big for your britches. And the other is, children should be seen and not heard. And girls, especially, shut up, stay in the corner, and just be aware of what everybody's needs are so that when they need something, you can jump up and give it to them. But other than that, shut up. And nobody ever said it like that, but that was the message that and sometimes people did actually say it like that. But the message we received was silence, stay quiet, nobody puts baby in the corner, right? Yes, no, we're all in the corner. So I feel like just is the vocabulary version of all of that. What do you think about that?
I think 100%. And I think being told that children should be seen and not heard, think about how traumatic that is to a child. I want you to, and I might get emotional. I seriously might get emotional because this is a big part of why I do what I do. I want you to sit there and I don't want you to talk. And that's coming from your parent who is supposed to love you the most, support you the most, and believe in you the most. And your whole childhood, they're saying, no, sit there. So yes, and as you think about these expressions like don't get too big for your britches, children should be seen and not heard, that is ongoing trauma to a child. And all of us bring it with them, bring it with us. I bring it with me, right? I'm a confidence evangelist. I wrote the book on women in confidence. I don't think I am confident all the time. So we all have to work through this. I call it shenanigans, because if I don't, I get too upset. We all need to work through this socialization and the constant punishment for speaking as women, punishment for speaking. You know, think about that. Think about how many times you were punished for speaking or told not to speak. And they might have had the best of intentions, but it stays with you. It stays with you.
It absolutely does. And I think that that's like, it's funny because I feel like these are the sorts of things. So when I was doing still actively coaching at the time, the way that I would work with people would be like, listen, you need a therapist. Like, I'm not a therapist, but the work that we do together will help you to operationalize the work that you're doing in therapy. Because like in therapy, you really work through the deep shit, you cry, you know, do all the stuff that needs to be done. But then I found like years ago that I would like, then I'd leave and I'd be like, okay, I did my mental health work, and then I just wouldn't do anything else. And the step that, and I was like, and after 20 years in therapy, I'm like, why the fuck do I still feel so bad? And then I realized that I wasn't operationalizing these ideas into my day-to-day life. I was just working on them in here. And so like breaking out of these feelings, like of being, you know, too much or not, you know, like, or not being allowed to speak, requires actions that help to reinforce it. And that's why like this is obviously now one of my go-to sharing books, is because I feel like the activities that you share are like, if you practice these on a regular basis, it will help you to operationalize therapeutic work, because it shows you how to act the way you are now starting to feel inside. Because we're given a blueprint for how to behave when we're supposed to be quiet. You know, they tell you, shut up, right? So, you know, okay, I'm supposed to be quiet. But when suddenly someone's like, okay, now I'm feeling so much more confident, I don't know how to act confident. Nobody ever taught me how to do that.
So yes, and that's why I shared actionable skills, because, or actionable tools. Confidence is a skill. A lot of people don't know this. You're not born with it. It's actually like 50-50. The jury's out. I've done the research. Some of it's nurture, some of it's nature. You can practice being confident. And the more you practice speaking up, the more it becomes second nature, the more you will stop worrying about it, the more you will do it, the better you will become at it. And then it's natural and you are more confident.
Can I ask you something? Were you always confident, or was there a space where you were like, you know, did this come from, I mean, I'm assuming this came from your own journey, but I'd love to know, like, how was it for you before you were Nancy Medoff, you know, of all of the pink things?
So I was always a scrapper, right? I'm the youngest of four. And in my house, growing up, if you did not speak up, you didn't get fed, right? If I didn't speak up and grab that piece of pizza, I wasn't getting the food. And that's an analogy, right? We had plenty of food. So I believe that I always spoke up. I don't know that I was born with it. I think it was a survival method. And I also think that things happened to me when I was younger that lit a spark in me and lit a fire in me. And that's undeniable. I have a fire in me, and I will follow my passion and help other women to speak up. And I didn't know until probably 3 or 4 years ago what drove it. And now I believe it was because of a series of events that happened to me when I was younger.
Got it. So it's like, it's amazing how that happens, right? How like you know, there's things from my past that are coming out now where I'm like, holy shit, that happened. Like now it's becoming apparent to me how to use this. But like for 20 years, I was like, why, how, that kind of thing.
Yep.
It actually reminds me of the beginning of a song, like one of these new wave songs, like Resurgence, is suffering ceases to be suffering when it finds a meaning. Now that obviously is a very melodramatic thing to say in a like a dark, you know, gothy song. However, it really does. I think that really has always helped me, that once I realize a meaning for something bad that has happened, or like, you know, and it may not come for a while, then it almost feels like I can put a bow on it and be like, I understand now, like, and I can now I'm channeling that energy somewhere. That's fabulous. I love that. Now that we missed a word, there's one word that we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about the word sorry. So that's I want to dive a little deeper into that, because that word I feel like we are always apologizing. Every time I turn around, there's a woman apologizing for something. Like, and sometimes it's not even something that like has anything to do with them, right? It's like, oh, you know, so
Right.
and so delivered this late. Oh, I'm sorry. And it's like, you don't have to be sorry. It's fine. It's, you know, so tell me, why do you feel like we apologize for like literally everything?
The same reason that we use just to qualify that what we're saying is valid and to qualify that we are allowed to speak, or to qualify, or to validate that you want to hear my opinion. Sorry, I have a question. Sorry, I'd like to add, whatever the case may be. I think it's a way of apologizing for behaving in a way that we're not supposed to behave because of how we've been socialized. And I want to be clear here as well. I am not saying that if you make a mistake, you shouldn't apologize. I think there's a lot of power in admitting that you did something wrong and apologizing. I say sorry all the time, mostly to my husband. I say it often, and it's very meaningful. At work, I rarely, if ever, say it. If I offended somebody, of course I'm going to say sorry. If my behavior was inappropriate, of course I'm going to say sorry. I'm not going to say sorry, this is late. I'm going to say thank you for your patience. I had to, it's interesting because I had to I chose to cancel plans with somebody last week, and I texted her and I said, thank you in advance for not being upset with me. I have to cancel plans. I have to cancel our dinner tonight, or I'm canceling our dinner tonight. Here's why, blah, blah, blah. So, and this goes back to our earlier point, I do this so much at work that now I'm doing it at home. So yes, I was sorry, but no, I'm going off on a tangent here. My point is, we say it too much. Instead of sorry, this was late, instead of saying sorry for interrupting, could you say, I know I'm interrupting. I have something really critical that I think is timely, and I'd like to say it.
I love how you come up with these. It feels like you're coming up with them on the fly, but I feel like you have.
I am.
You are. Oh my God, this is what happens, guys. When you read the book, then you'll be able to come up with them on the fly too. That's why I was like, I wasn't sure if all of them were in here. That's what I wanted to bring up next, was that this is where this book is really important, is you've written out the scripts, right? And for people like me, so I have ADHD and I'm autistic, and so I really struggle with social stuff. And so for people who don't really necessarily know what is appropriate, like this is sort of like the use this and I'll just tell you, and then you can go from there, which is so helpful for my neurodivergent folks, which is absolutely amazing. Speaking of words though, I saw on your Instagram, so like before the year, before the year started, or new year came, you were talking about picking your word for the year. I was so blown. I was like, damn, I love you. And, we often feel, especially as women, that if we say we're going to do something, that we have to do it. If we don't do it, we're just colossal failures, or people will think badly of us or whatever, which I do not subscribe to this philosophy. I actually think that you can change your mind. I have a podcast about it. You can literally change your mind whenever the hell you want. Like it's whatever, right? So you're all like, I'm picking a word of the year. And then you made a video and said, you know, I'm not doing that. And I was like, I love that you just shed that, so tell me a little bit about that journey, and like, how did you feel when you were making that decision?
I felt great when I was making the decision. So I have been a word of the year. I was an OG for the word of the year. I've been doing it probably like 15 years. I firmly believe that if you choose this intention, or this one word for the year, maybe your word is intention, that is your true north for the year. I have seen it work. I think I shared the story when you were at the conference. One year I chose thrive as my word. I lived, eat, and breathed thrive. I had a vision board. I had a bracelet. If it did not help me to thrive, I did not do it. And that was really helpful for me. And later that year, I was featured in Thrive Global Magazine as one of their power women. Like, that is not a coincidence. So I truly believe that this works. I have not been, and may never be may not be for a while, in the right mental state to choose how I want to live the next 12 months. I can't. I'm overwhelmed right now. I'm less overwhelmed than I have been, but the second half of 2022 sucked. I was very glad to close the door on 2002. I didn't wake up January 1st and say, well, now my life is unicorn and butterflies and I'm ready to level set and I'm going to I'm going to choose my word and I'm going to manifest a life of peace and calm. There's a lot of value in that. And I love that people can do that. I wasn't in the state to do it.
Yeah.
And I was spending so much time and so much energy and racking my brain and Googling the words and talking to friends. And I'm like, this is taking over my life and it's taken over the purpose. The purpose is to choose something that's going to serve you.
Mm-hmm.
And that exercise was no longer serving me. And then I remember I woke up one morning, 5 minutes before I did that reel. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to choose one. There is no truth. There was only my truth. And my
Mm-hmm.
truth at that moment was, I'm not doing it. It's like a monkey off of my back. And I believe I might have found my word about a day or two, a week maybe after I said, I'm not choosing words. I don't care if I choose a word. I'm doing a word of the month instead. I like
Mm-hmm.
that. I think it's more nimble. I think it's a great way to set up, blah, blah, blah. It helps me plan. It felt so good. So the message there is if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do.
I love that so much. That is, and I think that goes for like everything, right? Like I think like when you think about confidence, it's the confidence to do stuff that's scary, but also the confidence to not do something if you don't want to. And that's, I think, when I shut down my business last year. So I had my last year, 2022 was like a shit show, like trauma, like
Can I
coming
ask
out.
you a question?
Yeah.
Like, are you hearing? I just asked if I could ask you a question. I should have said, Manessa, I know I'm interrupting you. I have a really important question that I think is timely. See,
Yeah,
so we
no,
all do
ask
it.
me. What
We
is
all
it?
do it, everyone. I have so many people that have told me that 2022 was a shit show.
Yeah, a
Do you
lot
think
of
it was because we all came out of COVID and we thought that it was going to be like, oh, everything's going to be roses now, where we can go, we can meet, we can speak, we can go out in public without a mask? I don't know, but I think there's a disproportionate amount of people who really fell down hard the second half of 2022. I do.
I actually am glad you asked this question because I actually think I've been thinking about this a lot lately because this is something I'm hearing everywhere. And it's actually from a number of them are highly sensitive people or empath. Like a lot of people are they're introspective, thoughtful, that's the area where I'm finding a lot of people are having that. And here's what I think is happening. Because I've actually gone back into, I changed my trajectory of my whole life. Like I was just like, you know what? I know what I need to do, but my life, the way it's structured now is not done that way. So excuse me while I blow this up and redirect it. So now I went into this redirection space and in that space, I'm finding the same thing. And what I think happened is that we had 2 years of people who had for the last several, decades been going, and at an ever increasing pace. And I don't believe that the pace in which we are living our lives and the pace in which we are working and the things that the way that we see the world now is hopelessly skewed. And I think the reason that it happened was because a lot of the infrastructure was put in place in the 50s to the 80s. And now the internet has intensified it a lot, right? But we're still behaving as if it was the 80s. So now like people are working from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. because they can work from home. There's no boundaries. And I think that what ended up happening was that when everybody got to normal, like you said, we thought, oh, we just go back to normal, but they realized they had changed on the inside and what they want is different and what they need is different. And so it's a shit show because everybody's decided they're blowing up their lives and redirecting it towards what is really important. How do I want to live my life? I think it was, which is my word of the year, is supernova. And the reason why it's supernova is because last year was really about surrender, because I have been trying my whole life to control so much, control everything. And so I was surrendered to the universe last year. Every way I could possibly surrender, I did. And it was beautiful. But now I surrendered to basically trusting that the universe is out there and it's got my back. And now that I have that faith and trust, after like really unraveling, like I said, shit show last year, I feel like 2023 is poised to be the best year of my life, right? And so it's supernova because I want to explode all over everything and create, because like supernovas create life in the universe, right? So I'm going to explode my star and then help create life everywhere. That's my legacy here. So I agree with you. I think that 2022 was a shit show because before that, everybody was like, oh, when things get back to normal. And then you realize, yeah, okay, things are never getting back to normal because I've changed.
I think you're right. As you were speaking, I wrote down a few things, and I think I agree with you. People figured out what they really want,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not what they're doing. So they're changing and redirecting, and that redirection is hard, and it comes with pain. So
Lots
you
of
know,
pain,
the other
so much
side,
pain.
right? I know. So I think you're right. I think you're right. Thank you for allowing me to go down that little rabbit
Oh,
hole.
absolutely. These are the best parts about the podcast is when we do things like that. Okay. So we have actually gone through almost all of these conversations. So now before we wrap up, I'm going to ask like my most important question of all of them. Actually I have two. I want to know this. I'm curious because you've been doing this for a long time now. And what is the question that you get most, like after the sessions, like that you do at the conference, and then things like that? What is the question that you get most from people who are newly introduced to your ideas?
That is an excellent question. You did not send that to me ahead of time, so I
I
have to
am
think on
sorry.
the
We can
fly.
edit out while you're
No,
thinking of
no,
the
no, no,
answer.
no, 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 no. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. What do I get asked the most? Is that the
Yeah.
question?
Or what is your
Um,
favorite? It can be any. What is your favorite question that you get asked? Like really, what I'm trying to get an idea of is
yeah,
like, what do
yeah.
people want to know from you after they've experienced Nancy?
You already asked it, and it's why are you so confident?
Mm-hmm.
Is the question that I get asked the most. I'm assuming you want the answer to that, right?
Yeah. Why are you so confident?
Yeah. So like I said before, I'm not always confident. So I might be going before a large group and I might have imposter feeling, just like everybody else. I call it imposter feeling. It is not a syndrome. You are not sick. It is not a medical diagnosis. It's a feeling. And you can deal with a feeling and you can overcome the feeling. So I call it imposter feeling. So
I love that, by the way.
some
Love it so much.
yeah, yeah, that's a big one for me. So I'm not always confident. What I am confident in is that I know that even though I'm not confident, I know it's just a feeling. I know it's only a feeling. I know that I have felt this way before and hit it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
So I reframe, I recall, and I redirect, and then I can overcome the feeling. So that's, the answer is I'm not always this confident. Now, most of the time I am, because I know that I did the work and I know I earned my seat at whatever table I'm at. I know I did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a knowledge of recognizing everything I've done and all the hard work I've done and knowing that I deserve and have earned my seat at the table.
So what I'm hearing is, and I really like this, is one, there's situations where you just are confident, but then other times the confidence isn't there initially, but you have tools in place, which is what I want people to take away from this, is that if you're even the most confident people have tools to help move them from unconfident to confident in a short period of time. And it's sort of like about figuring out what those are, like what are your tools to help move you. Like it might be like a list of affirmations, it might be like a prize that you want or something, but something to basically remind you of who you are, like and what you've accomplished.
Yes, and I just want to. I want to again. I just said just go back to. I guarantee you, every person that you think has all the confidence in the world doesn't. J Lo is a great example. Jennifer Lopez, YouTube, Jennifer Lopez, self confidence. She's on
Sasha
a panel.
Fierce.
Oh,
That's her. That's her alter ego's
Beyonce?
name is Sasha
Oh,
Fierce.
it's so funny.
Yeah.
So so it's everybody has their own baggage. Everybody has this feeling. The difference is some people do it anyway.
Yeah.
They do the thing anyway. That's the difference.
That's my lipstick and horns that I wear. That comes from a lack of, like, I know they do so much heavy lifting for me, right? Because they're so bold. Like it just looks like I'm very confident. And if I look and I'm like, these are the confident things, I just follow along behind them. And it's great.
So here's what's interesting. Yeah, here's what's interesting. I could never show up with those horns like you do. Never. I couldn't do it. I could not. I couldn't.
I was so anxious.
But that works for you. Mm-hmm. So that strategy works for you. It wouldn't work for me. So that, because I can't do it. So that's, again, that's the point of the book, is take what works for you, leave behind what doesn't. And if you get 2 or 3 tips out of the book, that's going to help you show up as your authentic, badass self. great. My work here is done.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, before I ask you my final most important question, the imposter syndrome conversation, guys, you have to read the book just for that. Changed my entire perception. In fact, this is a whole different conversation actually, to have at some point, but you've put me on this path of just imposter syndrome makes me angry now. Just the term of it makes me angry because I realize that so much of it, it's a feeling that you have, but it's also a feeling that you have because of behaviors of people outside of you who have made you feel this way. It's not even all on us. And now I realize, oh my God, imposter syndrome is it's a thing that is perpetrated. It's a feeling you have, but it's perpetrated. And then I started to get mad. So now I have a video online, and then Ruchika Tulsian wrote a great book where she talks about it. And between the two of you, you've changed my life. I am now just on anytime someone says imposter syndrome, I'm like, well, let's talk about that.
I'm going to write another book. Yeah. I'm going to call my next book. I'm going to call my next book Imposter Syndrome is Bullshit. It is bullshit. I'm not saying that you're not uncomfortable and that you don't feel like an imposter. I'm saying that, to your point, it's an excuse. It's an excuse it's an excuse to stay small. And that's on you. That's on you.
And we can make that change. Oh my God, dude, I would love to talk to you about this book. Okay, before we wrap up, here is my final question for you. All right, here we go. We're making a mixtape. All right. You remember mixtapes back in the day? This is for everybody who is our age.
Wow, I'm the 80s queen.
This is 1983. So we're basically making mixtapes from the 80s and the 90s. So my question for you is, what 3 songs from the mixtape era would be on your mixtape?
So it would be Thunder Road by Bruce Springsteen, which is a little mellow. It would be 80s.
It could be 90s too, but right before CDs, before we did mixtapes, before we did MP3.
Wake Me Up Before You Go Go.
Love it.
All right, so it's Thunder Road by Bruce Springsteen. Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. Wow. Probably Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
Oh yes, I've heard 50 versions of that song. That song was my anthem as a kid, and of course Cyndi Lauper. I worship at the altar of Cyndi Lauper.
She's the best, the best, the best.
That is so fabulous. Nancy, thank you so much for joining me today. Our conversation, I could talk to you forever. When people are ready to come working with you, because gosh, you want to, where can they find you?
So I have a website. It's called nancymedoff.com. And I also have a podcast called Unmute Yourself, the podcast, very original. My editor and I actually started doing this podcast on a whim, and we've gained momentum. And now we are here to change how women behave in the workplace. And we are not stopping until everybody shows up confident, everybody shows up busting through those doors that are being opened for them, and everybody shows up taking and getting what they know they want, deserve at work.
Yes, that is exactly what I want for my listeners. Guys, get the book, Unmute Yourself, Speak Up, Stand Out, and get your seat at the table. You can get this on Nancy's website. You can get it on Amazon. It's a quick read. It will change your life. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Thank you.